Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be making my full 2021 NHL standings predictions. Now, the divisions in 2021 have pretty much been officially revealed, but what will these divisions actually look like for the 2021 season, and where do I see your favorite team placing in the NHL standings, and how good do I see them doing? Watch till the end for my full predictions and hit that subscribe button, especially if you're new for more hockey content just like this one. 65% of you guys that watch the video are not subscribed, so get on that and trust me, you will not want to miss this. And I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I have a few major hot takes in this video, so strap on your seatbelts, get buckle up, and let's get ready to get into this thing. But before we actually start with my predictions, we first need to actually talk about what these divisions will look like. And Pierre LeBrun has come out and reported what they will look like for the 2021 season. First and foremost, we got the All-Canadian division, so every single NHL Canadian team, 7 of them in one division, Montreal, Toronto, the list goes on, you know the gist. But we got 3 other divisions here that need to be sorted out, and we haven't had any confirmation of the names of the divisions. I'm just going to go with the Central, the Metro, and the West division, and we're going to start out with what teams are in the Metro division. From Pierre LeBrun, the Washington Capitals, Pittsburgh Penguins, Boston Bruins, Philadelphia Flyers, New Jersey Devils, Sabres, Rangers, and Islanders. For the Central division, you got the Tampa Bay Lightning, Detroit Red Wings, Blackhawks, Preds, Hurricanes, Wild, Panthers, and Blue Jackets. And last but not least, in the West division, you have the LA Kings, the Dallas Stars, Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche, Anaheim Ducks, San Jose Sharks, Arizona Coyotes, and St. Louis Blues. But we're going to work our way through the divisions. We're going to have the All-Canadian division as the last one, since I already made a video about that yesterday. You can check that out if you want. But today we're going to start out with the Metropolitan Division. Once again, Pittsburgh, Boston, Philadelphia, Buffalo, New Jersey, New York, and the Washington Capitals. So we're going to rank them from number 8 to number 1. And starting out in the last place position in the Metro, it's kind of sad that I have to put them here, but I don't see them having much substantial improvement next year, that being the New Jersey Devils. And I want to say this, I know I'm wearing the Rangers jersey, but I think the future New Jersey is very, very good. I think just this year, though, especially in the division they're going to, I don't think you're going to see too much humongous upgrades. I really like the acquisition of Ryan Murray. I think Corey Crawford's going to be good, but I don't know if that team is quite there yet to be contending for a playoff spot. I think they'll be decent, reaching 55 points, but still in the end, not enough to get into a playoff spot, at least in that Metro division, which is absolute chaos, by the way, as you'll see. Going on to the number 7 spot, we have another New York team in the Buffalo Sabres, the other New York team. I see them finishing with 59 points on the year, doing fairly well, but I think one of the biggest casualties of this division format will be the Buffalo Sabres' chances at the playoffs, which were kind of slim in the first place, but I think for Buffalo, it's kind of the worst case scenario because you got so many fantastic contending teams up there, and this is a team that's had so much failure already that I just don't see them getting over the hump this year. I mean, it would be perfectly NHL if that were to happen this year out of nowhere when it was like the toughest division they've ever played in, but I still see Buffalo in the number 7 spot and not being as strong to get into a playoff spot, at least in the division right now. Then going on to the number 6 spot, this is a tough one for me because in some ways, I see them doing very well. In other ways, though, I'm not completely convinced. That being the New York Rangers. I think New York's going to do well. I see them getting 69 points, tying with the number 5 team, but they come in at number 6 in the division for me. The main problem for me still is that defense. I mean, I think Adam Fox is going to be good. I think Jacob Trouba will rebound well, but there's just not enough substantial improvement defensively to where I can look at that team and say, yeah, that's a competent defense, because defensively, it's just not. The goaltending, I think, will be interesting. If Shesterkin can be a Calder Trophy winner, then maybe they're able to secure a playoff spot, but I think mostly the forward group will have to be leaned upon there. Guys like Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad will have to be huge, but I think Lafreniere's going to have a great rookie season. I think Shesterkin's going to have a great rookie season. And 69 points in 56 games, that's nothing to scoff at, and if they just got 1 point more, I think they would be in the playoff spot then. So I think it would still be a pretty successful season for New York, especially if the rookies were to step up big time. Then going on to my number 5 spot, I have the New York Islanders, the other New York team. To me, I see them tying with the New York Rangers, but getting the tiebreaker, 69 points on the year. And for me, the Islanders, I was kind of tempted to have them outside the playoffs, but the way I look at it is Barry Trotz is still the head coach. They're likely still a playoff team. That's a team that's still, we talk about how they're an old roster and all that, but they haven't really aged too much yet. You saw the Zach Boychuk retirement, which I think will affect them a little bit, but I think mostly that core is still intact. The big thing for me, though, is losing Devon Toews. That's a player that was huge for them on the defense last year. So I think they will be quite a bit worse than they were last year, but still a team that can win a lot of games, and as long as Barry Trotz is the guy there and the man, I think they'll do relatively well. Then going on to the number 4 spot, this is another team that I was kind of tempted to put outside the playoff picture, but then again, it is the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, I was tempted to put them outside the playoffs. I did that the year before. I did that the year before that, and I've been calling Pittsburgh to miss the playoffs for the last 2 years, and it's not happened yet. So I'm just gonna watch them miss the playoffs this year now. Watch them actually do badly. Anyways, it's Pittsburgh. I see them finishing with 70 points on the year, one ahead of the Islanders and the Rangers. I still see them doing decently. I think Tristan Jarry hopefully will transition some of the success he had last year, but they still got Crosby, they still got Malkin, they still got Letang. Hopefully we'll see a full season out of Jake Gensel as well, and I think he'll be huge as well. This is a team that's still very, very solid. Let's just hope they don't play Cody Ceci too much, eh? Then going into the top 3 spots in this Metro Division, this is a tough one for me, but coming in at number 3, I have the good old Boston boys and the Boston Bruins. I have them at 76 points at the moment, and Boston was an interesting one to project because they'll be likely without Pastrnak and Marchand for a little bit of the season to start out, but once they get those guys back, I think it'll be rolling for them. Now, the chances of them actually getting back to the Stanley Cup final, I think, are rather slim, but I still see this being a pretty solid playoff team and being one of the better teams in the National Hockey League. They still got most of their core intact. They didn't really blow it up like we thought they would maybe at the earlier start of this offseason. They still got most of those guys. I think most of those guys are still pretty good, coming in at number 3. And now inside the top 2 spots in the Metro, we have the Washington Capitals and the Philadelphia Flyers. Who will get number 1? Ooh, we'll see. Anyways, you'll see in a second because I'll talk about it. At number 2, the second best team in the Metro Division, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. I see them getting 76 points, tying with the Boston Bruins at that spot, but getting the tiebreaker. And I still see the Flyers doing very well in this next season. I mean, they were a great team last year. I think Carter Hart will see a big, substantial upgrade. If JVR is healthy, then that's another dynamic to that offense. But I think this team will be mostly the same. The big thing for me, though, is how they'll transition without Matt Niskanen, because he had one of his best years last year, at least eye test-wise. I was really impressed with him in the playoffs and in the regular season especially. But this was a player that was a big part of that defense, and now with him retired, I'm not really sure where the defense lies, to be honest, but we'll see what happens. That's still an interesting roster. I just think defensively they might take a little bit of a step back from where they were last year, unfortunately. Then going into the number 1 spot, I mean, Philadelphia might have been number 1 if they were able to keep that defense afloat, but coming into the number 1 spot, the Washington Capitals will gladly take the number 1 chance. I see them right now finishing with 77 points, 1 ahead of the Boston Bruins and the Philadelphia Flyers, and doing very well this next season. I think Ilya Samsonov is the real deal. He was great last year, and I think he'll be great once again this year, hopefully being the starter. But even if he isn't, I see Henrik Lundqvist having a pretty great rebound year and having one of the better years I think he's had. He's a super motivational person and a super go-getter, and I think this is a player that with a new opportunity, with a new franchise under his belt, will do very well and will seize that opportunity. Meanwhile, the rest of the roster is pretty much still intact. I think that forward group is going to be fantastic once again. Alex Ovechkin, of course, as the main guy, and that defense is mostly the same too. So I think it's the Washington Capitals you know and love. They'll be once again good and will once again be atop of the standings in the Metro Division. But now it's time for the Central Division. I named it the Central Division just to make it easier, but it's not really the Central Division. It's kind of like the Central East Division. I don't even know what to call it. I'm just calling it the Central Division. Anyways, this, in not even just the name potential, but just in the teams involved, is easily the weirdest division, I think, in this entire setup. You have the Detroit Red Wings, Blue Jackets, Preds, Blackhawks, Panthers, Lightning, Hurricanes, and the Minnesota Wild. It is pretty wacky, to say the least. But this Central Division is going to feature some pretty great teams, but also some pretty bad ones, and you could kind of guess what those bad teams will be. Coming in at the last spot, and coming in at number 8 in this Central Division, I have the last place team in the last year season, Detroit Red Wings. I see them finishing at 41 points, not being the worst team in the league. I want to say this right now. I don't think they'll be the worst team in the league. They'll definitely be one of them, but I see them finishing with 41 points in 56 games. I think Detroit's going to be interesting next year. They had some pretty big offseason acquisitions, which I think will definitely help them. Guys, especially like Thomas Greiss, I think will be great for them on that defense. You got guys like Troy Stecher, who I think will be good on the offense. Guys like Nemestikov, who will be solid for them. Bobby Ryan. But I just don't see Detroit making too many substantial improvements in the standings. Even in this Central Division, I could see them maybe getting the 7th spot ahead of the team I'll just mention right now, but I think at number 8 is where they'll probably be by the end of the year, and pretty comfortable as well. Then going into the number 7 spot, next up as the 7th team in the Central, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, I could see a situation where Chicago is worse in the standings than Detroit, but personally, I don't see it. I see them right now finishing with 51 points on the year, still being an okay team, but I think the goaltending will obviously hold them back. You got Colin Delia, Subban, and Lankinen. I think Lankinen will actually be pretty decent, but I think the goaltending overall will likely be one of the worst ones in the NHL, but that defense is still pretty rough sometimes, unless guys like Ian Mitchell really transition as they should. I think the team is still in that transition area, though, where they're trying to rebuild, they're trying to go after that, but they still got guys like Kane and Taves, which will obviously win them some games. So I think Chicago is not going to be terrible. They definitely will be one of the lesser teams in the standings, though, and definitely, I think, will not make the playoffs. Then going into our number 6 spot, next up, I have a team that is probably going to be, I don't know how unpopular of a take this is, to be honest with y'all, but I have the Nashville Predators at number 6. I just don't see it with Nashville. And I think Roman Jost is going to be great next year as well. Hopefully we'll see a full season of Victor Arvidsson, but there's just something in the water in Nashville. I don't know. There's something wrong in the water in Nashville. I just can't put my finger on it. This team, since the 2017 season, has been mediocre. I know they won the President's Trophy, but that team was just not good in the playoffs either. And just in the playoffs and regular season-wise since 2018, they've just been the definition of a mediocre team. And I know I'm a Dallas Stars fan and I'm talking trash about that, but still, this is a team that I just don't really see the direction of, because they're a win-now team that just doesn't have a lot of win-now pieces. And especially the goaltending, I really don't see Pekka Rinne having a better season than he did last year. Maybe Saros comes in the net, but even he wasn't great last year either. This is a team that I'm kind of just not really convinced about. I think they'll be all right, getting 64 points on the year, but probably not enough to make the playoffs in my opinion. Now we're going to get into the number 5 spot, and this is a team that I think could make the playoffs. We'll see how the wild card situations work, but I think they could be in the mix for sure. That being the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, the Blue Jackets I see finishing with 65 points, 1 point over the Nashville Predators, and I see them doing relatively well. The goaltending, I think will still be great next year in Korpisalo and Merzlikins. That defense, I think, will also be solid as well. Of course, with John Tortorella, that's just how it works. And that offense, I think, has some sneaky potential. If Pierre-Luc Dubois plays a full season and improves a lot of offensively for sure, I think that's an offense that is definitely upgraded. But I just don't see enough offensive skilled pieces to where they can really contend for even a top 3 spot in that division. I think they'll be all right, but 65 points is pretty much the most I see them getting. And now advancing on to the number 4 spot, and coming in right now, right here, I have the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers, to me, I see getting 67 points on the year, doing pretty well. And here's the thing. It's just goaltending, man. It's just goaltending. I think the defense worked pretty well last year, especially that Ekblad and Uyghur line or pairing, which was just dynamic in all zones. I think if Sergei Bobrovsky can have a rebound year, then this is looking a lot different. But I don't think he does. I really don't think he does. Maybe he does it, but I really don't think he does it. I know I'm contradicting myself right now, but Sergei Bobrovsky really is the key to the Florida Panthers. If they're going to be seriously a playoff contender, he needs to be worth even somewhat in the atmosphere worth of $10 million, which I doubt will actually happen, but we'll see. But I think that offense will be great next year as well. That defense will hopefully see some improvements too. I just think overall that goaltending is key for Florida. If it goes their way, then Florida's going to be a pretty solid team next year. Now we're going to go on to the number 3 spot, into the top 3 in the Central. I'm still confused on what to call it, but we're going to call it the Central. I have the Minnesota Wild, 68 points on the year. I see them getting a top 3 spot in this division and doing pretty well for themselves. Honestly, I see the Wild doing well. The only kind of gripe I have against them is maybe goaltending, but if Cam Talbot can kind of recapture the second half he had last year in Calgary, then I think Minnesota might be pretty well off. That defense is one of the best in the NHL, and that offense has really sneaky potential. If Kaprizov can really come into his own and be a Calder candidate, then I think that has some real potential, and Kevin Kevin Fiala hopefully recapturing what he had in the second half last year, and maybe even Marco Rossi playing a full season with them could definitely help. Again, the center situation is still a bit of an iffy one for me. We'll see if Marcus Johansson actually gets to that level, even Nick Bonino, but I still think offensively they will have some good pieces, and hopefully next year they will be a pretty good playoff contender as well as not being mediocre. Let's hope. Now we're going to go on to the number 2 spots, and we have the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Carolina Hurricanes. And obviously the Tampa Bay Lightning were the defending Stanley Cup champions, but I think the Carolina Hurricanes are actually looking quite well going into the next season, but we'll see. This top 2 is definitely between Carolina and Tampa Bay, and those are really the only contenders for the top spot, in my opinion. But how I see that top 2 shaking out is, at the number 2 spot, I see the Carolina Hurricanes finishing at number 2. I see them having a 78-point season on the dot, which is actually pretty great for them in a 56-game season. So I think the Carolina Hurricanes will do quite well. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. The big problem with Carolina is still the goaltending. I thought they were going to address it in this offseason, maybe sign a good goaltender for like a 1-year contract. Like, even a Braden Holtby would have been, okay, you're trying to make an improvement. But they still got Peter Mrazek, and they still got James Reimer. I know they've tried to move both in this offseason, but still, they haven't made any moves, and the goaltending still is what it is. Super inconsistent and super unreliable. That defense is still fantastic, and that offense will be great. But I just don't know if they have the goaltending to get to the next level in the regular season or even in the playoffs, which is still a big concern for me going into 2020, as it always has been. Now we're going to go on to the number 1 spot, and of course, with Carolina at number 2, I have the defending Stanley Cup champions in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Finishing with 80 points on the season, I see Tampa Bay being one of the best teams in the NHL. Not the best, we'll get into that in a second, but I see them being probably second or third best, and I still see them having a great season. They might have some casualties maybe in this offseason if they maybe were to trade Tyler Johnson or something, and they will have some casualties in the expansion draft as well, but as long as it's not coming right now, as long as they're still playing and have all their guys, Tampa's going to be one of the best teams in the NHL, one of the most well-rounded, and deservedly so in the Cup last year as well. So overall, Tampa and Carolina being the top 2 spots. I'm not sure that's one of my hot takes, but yeah, I expect that to happen. And now on to the West Division. Yeah, well, let's just call it for right now. For the West Division, you have the Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche, Anaheim Ducks, Sharks, Coyotes, Kings, Blues, and Dallas Stars. And we're going to start out with the number 8 spot, work our way once again to number 1, and a number 8 in the Central, or not in the Central, in the West Division, I have the LA Kings. To me, I see LA being the worst team in the NHL next year with 39 points on the season. I see a bunch of people talking about Detroit or Ottawa being the worst team in the league. I really don't see that. Both of them have made substantial improvements in this offseason in pretty much every area, and I see the LA Kings as a team that basically did nothing. Sure, they added Olli Maatta, which I think will be a net positive for them, but not enough to where I see that team doing much. If Drew Doughty gets back to Drew Doughty like 2012 level, then maybe they might have a chance to not be the worst team in the league, but I really don't see it. I mean, this is a transitional year to them where a lot of the guys, the young guys they have in the pool are still likely to be in the pool, and unless the Quinton Byfield were to absolutely explode next year, I really don't see LA making much of an impact. But we're going to go now to the number 7 spot, and at my number 7 spot in the West Division, this is another Californian team that I just really don't see getting off the ground too much in the Anaheim Ducks. And for me, the Anaheim Ducks are also a team that will be low in the standings just overall. I see them getting 48 points on the season, and they're going to do all right, I guess. John Gibson will be as good as ever, I think, hopefully at least. And I think they do have some pretty great positives and pretty great additions, pretty great pieces too. But just like LA, they're kind of in that situation where most of the young guys they have are still kind of transitioning. Guys like Sam Steele need more time, and it's kind of just how it happens. So I think Anaheim is still going to be relatively bad next year, and hopefully, for them at least, contending for that first overall pick. But definitely not in the highs of this West Division, and definitely not making the playoffs, in my opinion. Famous last words. Then going on to the number 6 spot, another team that I don't see making the playoffs. Once again, famous last words. We'll see what happens. I have the San Jose Sharks. And just like last year, I see the bottom 3 teams in the divisions that they are, being the Californian teams. San Jose, I think, will get 53 points on the year and will be decent, but I just don't know where this team improves too much. I think some players will rebound. Guys like Erik Karlsson, hopefully, will see a better season. But just overall, I think that goaltending got worse, to be honest. I know a lot of people that like Devin Dubnyk, but he was surrounded, at least in the last couple of years, with one of the best defenses in the NHL and continually got worse. Now he's in almost a league below in terms of defensive play in the San Jose Sharks, and you're expecting him to be back to his Vezina level. I just don't see it. And I think Devin Dubnyk's going to be all right, but probably below a 900 save percentage. Same thing with Martin Jones. I've legit said with Martin Jones that he's going to rebound for like the last 3 seasons. It's never happened, and I've practically given up. So for me, for the San Jose Sharks, even though I love him, I love him as a team. I love watching him play. They're not going to win too many games, at least in my opinion. I would love to be wrong. So humongously loving him to be wrong right now, but I don't see it happening. Now we're going to go into the top 5 spots in the West, and this is where it gets really competitive in my opinion, because I got the bottom 3 teams and the California teams, but once we get out of those teams, I think there's a lot of good teams to go around. Now, this next spot is going to be surprising people, because I see that a lot of people having this team like super low in the standings for practically no reason in my opinion. That being the Arizona Coyotes. Now, I don't know if they'll make the playoffs if we have like the actual wild card situations that we had last year, or as we normally do. I see them getting 61 points on the year and being a decent team. I don't see, obviously they don't have Taylor Hall anymore, and that sucks. But they were a pretty good team before they got Taylor Hall, and sure they weren't scoring many goals, but you have the Darcy Kemper injury, and before the Darcy Kemper injury and before they added Taylor Hall, they were looking like a pretty great playoff team. So for me, Arizona is an interesting one. Besides Taylor Hall, they didn't really lose anybody substantial that will actually go against them, and I think Arizona will still be pretty decent next year. Likely not a playoff team, but I know there's all the controversy there. They're still relatively the same team, and will still play great defense while also having fantastic goaltending. So I'm not completely worried about how Arizona will do next year. But now we're going to go into the number 4 spot, and you know, I think they'll make the playoffs, but I'm not sure how long they'll stay there, that being the St. Louis Blues. I see them finishing with 70 points on the year, being one of the better teams in the NHL, and being one of the better teams in the Central, or no, I keep saying the Central Division. The Blues aren't in the Central anymore. It's kind of weird, but it is what it is. Being in the West Division. That's kind of wacky. Anyways, for St. Louis, I see them doing very, very well, being in the playoffs. I just am not really convinced that Jordan Binnington will have this huge rebound year. I think he'll be relatively the same, maybe around a 9-10 save percentage, but I think what we saw in 2019 was the best we'll see in Jordan Binnington's career. He's still a decent goaltender, but especially with Jake Allen gone too, he has less of a cushion there in terms of backup ability. I think St. Louis will do decent and will do fine, just not a team that I see going too far in the playoffs. But now, into the top 3. And in this top 3 in the West, we have the Colorado Avalanche, the Vegas Golden Knights, and the Dallas Stars. Arguably the top 3 teams in the West last year, and I think they'll do fairly well. Coming in at the number 3 spot. This might be one of the hotter takes I have in today's video, just to give you guys... No, I'm not putting Colorado at number 3. Don't say... No, I'm not saying that. But at number 3, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. I have them finishing with 72 points on the season. I see them still being one of the better teams in the NHL, but I see a lot of people having them at number 1 or even number 2 in the division. Personally, I don't quite agree with that. To me, Vegas will be interesting because it seems like they're not done in this offseason. They could be moving a Pacioretty or could be moving even a March or so. I'm not sure if that happens, but even if it doesn't, I see Vegas doing a little bit worse than they did last year, at least in terms of point per game average. This team really needed some more offensive goal scoring, and they went out and got Alex Pietrangelo. Why? I still think he'll be a net positive and will be good for them, but I really don't see how Pietrangelo brings what they didn't have. They needed more defensive play on the defense. They needed more goal scoring on the offense, and Pietrangelo brings neither of that, to be honest. And I think he'll still be good, especially on the power play, but I think Vegas is just kind of confusing right now. We'll see what happens. I'd love to be wrong. I hope Vegas does well, but I still see them at the number 3 spot in this division. Then going on to number 2, and my favorite team in the NHL will finish second in this division, that being the Dallas Stars. Now, I want to say this right now, that yes, I'm not going to hide my bias. I think Dallas will do well this season, but playoffs-wise, I'm not really sure if they'll go anywhere. Maybe like a first or second round exit at the very most. I see Dallas doing well in the regular season, though, getting 74 points with guys like Gurianov and Rupe Hintz hopefully getting more playing time. We'll start to see that hopefully happen, but Miro Heiskanen will hopefully transition some of that playoff ability into what we see in the regular season. I think the goaltending tandem will be a lot better. I mean, Ben Bishop kind of had a pretty big off year last year, and if he can get back to his level just a couple years back, that's a player that will be huge for them. Same thing with Anton Hudobin as well. I see Dallas overall doing great. Again, playoff-wise, I'm not really sure how far they go, but I still think this is a team that regular season wise can do quite a bit, finishing with 74 points on the season. And then we get into the final team in the West at number 1, and in my opinion being the best team in the NHL, at least regular season wise. I have the Colorado Avalanche. To me, the Colorado Avalanche will finish with 80 points on the year, just overall being a fantastic... Wait, did I put 80 points for the Avs? Wait a second. Wait a second. I put 80 points for the Avs. I was supposed to put 81. Anyways. I've absolutely failed you guys. Sorry. I meant to put 81 for the Avs on my freaking score sheet, whatever. And I apparently read 80. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But no, they'll get 81 points on the year, and Tampa Bay will get 80. So that's kind of how I see it right now in terms of the top 2 teams in the NHL. But Colorado being number 1, I see them just being an absolutely dominant team. If they are able to stay healthy, which is a big if, that team is going to be loaded. I mean, especially with the additions of Devon Toews especially, but Brandon Saad is going to be magnificent for them. In terms of goaltending, I think it's a little bit better than a team like Carolina in terms of what you can expect. I mean, Franco was fantastic last year, or Francouz, and I feel like Grubauer also has potential to be a good starter in the NHL. I do have my concerns there, but it could be a lot worse, and I think that defense is going to be great again next year, but that offense is going to be prolific. Nathan MacKinnon will get his first, well, I don't know, we'll play 56 games. I don't think he's going to get 100 points, but we'll see. I think he's going to be fantastic. Same thing with guys like Mikko Rantanen and Gabriel Landeskog and Andre Burakovsky, Naz and Kadri. The amount of talent they have on that team is absolutely insane. We'll see that in the regular season, and we'll also see that in the playoffs this year as they hope to get their, third Stanley Cup? I think I'm correct on that. Their most recent Stanley Cup. Let's be honest here, they'll probably get it. And you know what? I'm just going to make some Stanley Cup final predictions here. I'm not going to go through all the playoffs, but I'll just go through who I see going from the West and the East. Now, I don't know, we don't know what, conferences these divisions will be in, but I would assume the Central and the West Division will be in the West Conference or whatever they're going to do there. And the Canadian Division and the Metro Division will be in the equivalent of the East Conference. Again, we don't know, still don't know some stuff. It's kind of all weird right now, but that's kind of how I see it. So, in terms of the Central versus the West, let's just combine the Central and the West into one conference. For the team that I see coming out of that whole conference is going to be the Colorado Avalanche, and they'll be facing somebody in the Stanley Cup final. And for the other, I see it coming from the Metro Division. It could be the Flyers. You know what? That's what I'm gonna go with right now. I'm gonna go with the Colorado Avalanche and the Philadelphia Flyers in the Stanley Cup final, and I'm gonna say Avs in 5. We'll see what happens, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm sticking right now. Maybe the Washington Capitals also get to that spot, but I see the Avalanche being the Stanley Cup winner. But that's how I'm feeling it right now. Let me know down in the comments down below, what do you agree and disagree with my rankings, and who do you see being the worst and the best teams and everything in the middle in the NHL this next season? What do you think about these divisions, all this craziness? Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Once again, 65% of the people that are watching these videos are not subscribed, so get on it if you enjoyed. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Once again, comment down below all your thoughts and share this video with your friends. Get the predictions out there. Click on this card as well to watch my, I probably already linked it, but watch my all Canadian Division predictions right in one card. Click, and I'll see you guys next video or stream. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm feeling right now. We might see some differences in the divisions, maybe, but I kind of doubt that right now. Pierre LeBrun is usually correct with what he's got. So, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.